Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Full Quota podcast. This is your South African cricket podcast. It is your number one South African cricket podcast. We're doing this on the morning of the 20th, a couple of minutes ago. Not Aiden. Aiden's not playing in the MLC. Quinton de Kock was selected for the Seattle Orcas in Major League Cricket, and also Anrich Nokia was selected for the Washington Freedom. Interesting with Anrich Nokia, he just goes to capital cities. It's weird, but it's okay. He just travels to capital cities. So if he played in London, he played in London. I find him pretty weird, but anyway. I'm interested to see if Quinton's going to enjoy the wind in Seattle. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say anything else. There's a little bit of rain. He might be miserable up there, but that's okay. But remember, if you want to support the podcast, please send me an email, Mpho at 1wsr.com. We're on Spotify. We're on YouTube. We're also on Apple Podcasts. On the audio versions, it's Full Quota Podcast written out like that. You can find us like that, which is awesome. And then on YouTube with One World Sports Radio. If you know us, you'll see us, you'll find us there, which is great. Awesome. Now, Tim, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Looking forward to this chat because I've been lining up this sort of conversation for a couple of weeks now. I wanted us to have a deep dive into the season at some stage. Just to add, in terms of the Major League Cricket, we are working towards having a discussion with somebody around that at some stage. So we will be talking about it, hopefully. And they will tell us the ramifications of Quinton de Kock and Anrich Nokia being in America and just what that means for American cricket. But we will get into that at a later stage.
I think the window is quite interesting, obviously, because it seems like it's in July. So it's just before like the 100, after the IPL. And South Africa's not playing any games until probably we're going towards the World Cup. So I think it's really awesome. I think if they could have gotten other South Africans to come in and play a lot more, because I see Aaron Finch, I see Mitchell Marsh, I see Marcus Stoinis, Wanindu Hasaranga of Sri Lanka is there, and you're like, maybe,
that's due to, and we will discuss, that's due to they only allowed a certain amount of overseas players in their squads.
Okay.
Just like any league, they are trying to promote within. So they're not having. It's not like the Emirates one where you just have a whole bunch of overseas players and one or two locals. It's the other way around. The other thing is they have a lot of South Africans there already. A lot of South Africans who are there already. That we've spoken to Marcus Ackerman. He was in the minor league last season. Shadley van Skalkvik, Dane Pete. So a lot of guys who know South African domestic cricket. They've got a lot of guys there already.
Carmi LaRue. Yeah. Trying to run the names. Okay, but we're not talking about Major League Cricket. We love Americans, but that's for another time. So what we decided to do was to do a domestic recap, as we promised you guys. And this is a Division 2 recap, right? We're looking at, and the question is, the players that should be performing in Division 1 next year. Obviously, just to give you a lay of the land before we continue anything else, this is how it ended up from a promotion and relegation situation, right? In that final day, the 4-day series went down to the wire, and the Tuskers needed to win, which they accomplished against the six-gun grill Garden Route Badgers. That's it'll be a long name. That were playing like essentially they was on holiday. But the big game was the Eastern Storm against Mpumalanga. Or was it? It's Limpopo, sorry. Eastern Storm against Limpopo. Limpopo managed to win that game even after the Eastern Storm scored 320 in the first innings. Limpopo came through with another 350, and it then became a question of then it became the drama, the collapse, the biggest collapse you'll ever see. And if there ever was a match fixing inquiry, and I'm going to say it on this podcast, I'd also look into this. The Eastern Storm got bowled out for 61. How? If I'm a Northern Cape Heat supporter, I'm sitting here going, guys, But anyway, if you look at this table, Northern Cape Heat had one bad tournament. And they had a bad tournament where they finished 4th out of 7. They've been 1 and 2 in the other 3 tournaments, but it wasn't good enough for them to win. They've won the same amount of tournaments as the Tuskers. They've also gotten a second place like the Tuskers. The only difference is that the Tuskers finished 3rd in one tournament, and Northern Cape Heat finished 4th, and that's how the Northern Cape Heat are not in Division 1. But congratulations to KZN Inland, the Tuskers. We're looking forward to seeing you there, and to a certain extent, it made this conversation a little bit tougher, Tim, because a lot of the players who are in KZN Inland would be in our lists, but now I had to go look around and look outside because some guys are coming up. But anyway, we'll talk about that. But what are your thoughts on obviously the first 2 years of Division 2? It's the first time we've had a Division 2 in, I'm saying, the modern era. We've always had provincial level and franchise level, but we've never had a provincial county-esque Division 1 and Division 2. Your thoughts on the first 2 seasons?
My thoughts are it's been a resounding success. If you just look at the way that they played and the passion that the different teams went in, it went down to the last day. Not the last game. It went down to the last day as to what was going to transpire in terms of promotion. We're talking about promotion there for Division 2. That is how close it went. Even with the team that finished first, they couldn't do anything, so they were sitting there on their sofas, biting their nails, going through all sorts of emotions. I can only imagine. But the fact that it went down to the last day of provincial cricket for Division 2 in the season tells me it was a resounding success. The other point that we will make later on is the players that we picked. I picked a selection of players. I tried to go across the provinces, so not just stick with one. I tried to do that as much as possible. Wasn't easy, but the fact that I was able to do that tells me that there was a wealth of talent across the provinces. That is why this was brought in. It was brought in to have a wider pool of players to select across the country. So the fact that I am able to pick 6 players from 6 different regions tells me that in the first 2 years there's still a lot that needs to go into it. There's a shortage of fast bowlers, genuine fast bowlers, in my opinion. That's a problem for me.
Do you think? So on the fast bowler comment, before you continue, I'll let you continue. Is it not a case of the moment you come out of that under-19 or club setup, and if you are quick enough, and I mean 140 upwards, there's a space for you in Division 1. You don't even need to go to Division 2, which is why we're not seeing guys like that. I think the quickest guy there is Stefan Tate, but like he's been around. Bashir Walters, we know them. Whereas, for instance, if a Kwena Mapaka who's leaving Saints soon, right? Kwena's not going to go to Easterns. He's going to be chilling with the Lions. And that day is coming when Left Arm Seam is coming to the north. So it's like Dale Steyn, right? If we had a provincial type of setup, right? Dale would have had to play probably 3 games for Limpopo. He would have been plucked out like he was, and he was thrown into Northerns. So I see it like that, and I think it's a one thing South Africa has. We can identify fast bowlers. It's we're fascinated with pace. But anyway,
yes.
Is it that?
That's a valid point, and it is 100% true. I suppose it's an issue with South African sport in general, and that happens a lot, not just in cricket. What you want that fast bowler to stay. So if he is born, let's say he's born in Hazyview, you want him to stay at Mpumalanga for a couple of seasons to find his rhythm, to find his place, and then when he goes to Division 1, he is ready. My qualification for that is Stefan Tate. Stefan Tate's already been in Division 1, but he wasn't ready. He wasn't ready for Division 1. If he had stayed in Division 2, I think he would be in a better... He's in a good place now, and I think there's a large argument as to why he should be back in Division 2. But if he had never gone to Division 1 at that stage, he might have progressed further in terms of mental ability, in terms of those sorts of challenges that you have. Because not winning every game is blooming hard. If you're losing more than you're winning, which you tend to do if you're not KZN or Northern Cape, if you're the next 5 teams, you are probably going to lose more than you win. That gives you that mental strength that you need. I always going to go on about mental strength. Yeah. That gives you that extra edge that when you go into Alliance, when you go into Western Province, when you go into a Warriors, you have ticked all the boxes. You have adapted. You are 100% ready for that next challenge. That's my issue.
Let's talk about those 5 teams. Obviously, Northern Cape didn't make it in, but to a certain extent, their answer for next season to try push for promotion is to try and keep the same squad. But there's some people in that squad who are going to be leaving, and we're going to talk about those. But for the other 5, how do you become better? Knowing what you've just told me. Because what you've told me is that if you're good, you will not be playing for Mpumalanga. You won't be playing for Limpopo. So where do they go to find players in order to make them better? For instance, right, I look at that Limpopo team. They've got some very interesting players. One of those played for the Lions last year, right, Ron Hasbrook. So is that where their market is? Some sort of a failed system of guys who failed the Division 1 come into the North and come and play?
It's a two-pronged system. That is one part of it. Guys that are good, not good. Guys who are decent first-class cricketers, but they can't quite bridge that gap. They're probably a little bit too good for Division 2, but they're not quite good enough for Division 1. There is a disparity at the moment. We want to close that as much as possible. I don't want to go into that, but that's going to be very, very challenging. There's always going to be some kind of discrepancy there. It's not going to be a level playing field. It's not.
Yeah.
It can be closed in terms of the gap can be closer, but it's never going to be closed from that point of view. So you're always going to want to get those guys. Mpumalanga got Kieran Kenny from Western Province, fast bowler. Good season there.
Oh, yes, I remember from last year.
Yeah. So you're going to get that. The other thing is they need to promote within. Now that requires some level of performance. That's the tricky part. Because if they're always losing. To promote within, you need money.
Yeah.
Because you need
and
money.
You need a club system as well in your province.
To create that high performance center, to make that club system competitive. I know, for example, the A-League in Western Province is very strong. Very strong. There are several players that can be playing first-class cricket, in my opinion. And I watch them every weekend, if I can. But I hear time and time again, outside of that and the possibly the one in Gauteng, it's a struggle. It's a struggle to get that gap. What they need to do is take those players in Division 1 that didn't quite work out and promote within. We spoke to Mark Charlton a few months ago. Mark Charlton is he's the coach of Northern Cape Heat. He's trying to do the latter. He's trying to promote from within. But what he's doing is he's not inviting several hundred people to go and set up. He's inviting small groups. So they are getting scouts around that region and small groups. If they can get 2 players per season, then they're winning. To play within their system, to go and be coached on a one-on-one basis with Mark Charlton or his assistant. So they are making sure that what they get is good enough for. So it's about quality and not quantity for him. That's the tricky part. That's the tricky part, and it requires a lot of money. But that's the better route that you go. You try and promote from within.
Look, to a certain extent, you could say it's worked, and KZN Inland is an example of that because they did that. But I found it quite interesting. I think KZN Inland, obviously being attached to a bigger union in KZN, and they've got a really good club system there. Senran, which is something we spoke about it actually when we interviewed him. They made the most of that. You know, it was like a Dolphins B team playing, and they looked good. What surprised me was the Eastern Storm, as well as the Garden Route Badgers, as well as to a certain extent them, because I can't. Northern Cape is also central region with they were tied with the Knights for the longest of times, and they came through. But obviously we knew what was happening abroad, and border wasn't going great at the time. In this period, but I was surprised that we didn't get much of a challenge in terms of quality of players at Easterns, and those players were quality. I know Grant Thompson moved from Easterns to Northern Cape at the start of the season, but Wesley Kulentianos is there. They really have Gabelo Sukukune came back, but it just never clicked. The Garden Route Badgers had like some of the guys who've played Division 1, but they never gave us a challenge. And it was surprising to me because I thought those were the teams that be knocking down promotion door, not necessarily Northern Cape, who were my surprise package, but you could see what good organization, good scouting, good personnel management helps. And then on the other side, as you point out with the Tuskers, coming from within. So within your structures, within your setups, what is KZN giving you? You know, what is PMB giving you? What are you getting from the system? They don't have that many people who've come from outside, but they've really done well. And it's kind of interesting for the 5 teams who didn't make it, who are not even like 1 or 2, including what the Knights are going to do coming down in Division 2, as to how you're now going to build a squad, because that was the biggest issue, right? You need to build a squad across 2. But let's go into our player discussion and maybe, give people ideas. I don't know if you want to watch and see. Cool. So, Tim, I'm going to start with you. You told me to pick 4, but you said you have 6. So I'm going to start with you because you've got 6. So what's your first name on your list of a guy who should be in Division 1 next year?
Okay. I've been calling for this guy for a couple of seasons now. Pretty much since the inauguration of the 2-division structure. I knew he was going to settle in. I knew he was going to do well. Particularly the longer format for me. The longer format, he can play all 3, but the longer format is his niche. It's his go-to format. It's his place where he thrives. He's also under 30. I think he's well under 30. Batsman, Northern Cape Heat. So it's my Northern Cape Heat guy. It's Ernest Kim. Ernest Kim. So just to qualify that quickly with the numbers, just quickly. So this season, 475 runs at an average of 52. Yes. Last season, 399 runs at an average of 57. So that's 2 seasons averaging over 50. And I think as a batsman, if you're in Division 2, you need to be targeting for averaging 50. If you miss it, that's fine, but that's what your target needs to be, for me. So for me, they are teams that are looking for opening batsmen, in my opinion, or should be, rather. Ernest Kemp should be a certainty. for me.
Which team?
That's a tough one. That is a tough one.
I have Northwest.
Yes, probably Northwest. Northwest.
Because the
Yeah,
other thing
probably
is this,
Northwest.
right? And this is
Yeah.
the one thing I think we need to touch on, right? I don't want Ernest Kemp to come to Division One and do what Gabelo Sukukune did last year, just bench. You know,
No.
put
No.
behind
He's
the
got to play.
openers. You want someone who's going
No.
to play, right?
Play.
And so, outside of necessarily him going to KZN Inland and fighting for a spot there, I think it's Northwest because um, I look at the Dolphins. Dolphins are pretty set there at opener. So too are Eastern Cape. Um, Western Province. I don't know what you guys want to do, but I think Eddie Moore is great.
Well,
And if, with
the
Tony
issue.
going to the Proteas, you might have an issue.
Yeah.
Um,
The issue is here. I think Bullet might be an option.
okay,
I think Bullet might be an
that's another
option.
team that really struggled.
I don't think you want Stian to open. Stian is not an. Stian can do a job opening, but he's not an opener. So if I'm thinking those two, Northwest or Borland.
Stian
For
Van
him.
Sail, the most versatile man in South African cricket.
I
It's
know.
ridiculous. He's like Francois Steyn of South African cricket, but he's never played. He's played for the Proteas, but he hasn't played that much. But yeah, Stian, we love you, but dog, just put your foot down. Okay, I have another name out of um out of Northern Cape, but because we've gone Northern Cape heavy, I'll leave that for later. Even though he was the highest run scorer this year in the thing, also younger, also 26-year-old. But I'll go for my fave, middle order batter, Easterns. Um, Scored a century, 3 half centuries this year, for Easterns. Gabelo Sukukune, 25 years old, left-hand bat, Black African batter. If you're looking for a Black African batter, he's the guy. I think there's a spot for him at Northwest. Even I think he can compete for a spot at Boland as well. He did play for the Warriors last year. Didn't get enough game time, but I do think a trip down the N12 on the other side could do him justice. Also, maybe in that middle order for KZN Inland if they're looking for somebody who can come in and score runs. He scored 427 runs last year in the 4-day series. He averaged 42. Really, I'm a fan of this kid. I think he's really awesome, and I think he can bat really well. And he's been one of the reasons why Easterns are where they are. He averaged 48 in the 1-day cup as well. He just needs opportunity at the highest level, and to a certain extent, there's a franchise. So here's my thing, right? A guy like John T. Rapulana, he had a great final 4-day series, right? But I think John T is more Division 2 quality and slightly older. And I do think if the Lions are looking for a Timber-esque replacement to replace when Timber goes and plays for the Proteas, Gabelo's probably someone who can put his hand up. And if you don't want to go the John T route, knowing that you need one Black African in your top order, right? So that's how I went there. He's got a lot more options, right? But obviously, Warriors have Lesiba Ngwepe. The Western Province might need to use him if Tony DeZorzi is going to be a fully fledged Protea, and play all formats. I don't know. Is Tony DeZorzi contracted for the Proteas? I don't think so.
Don't think so.
No, he's not.
Don't think
yes.
so.
However, in that summer period at the end of the year and the beginning of next year, if Tony's unavailable for 4 or 5 games, you're going to need to find a Black African somewhere. I don't know who they've been using in Western Province, but you could give him a shout. But for me, Gabelo needs another run, but not in a team that is batting heavy. And I know in South Africa, some teams are just very batting heavy. The Titans, the Lions are batting heavy. But there's that Rapulana situation if you want to improve on that spot. But like Northwest, throw him in with Sinokwane as well. They're having a great time. And yeah, look, I look at Northwest. I'm like, you guys need to be better. You need to find better batters. And, this kid is it. Tim, your next player.
No, I'm just going to say I agree. I just want to say I agree with you entirely. We won't get into that, but I think if Northwest need to do a lot better if they want to stay in Division 1. My next player, so I'm going to go similar with you. So I'm not going to go with an Easton's player. I've got an Easton's player here. The Easton's player will sit out until later. For now, I'm going to go bowling. I'm going to go bowling. And there are a lot of these kind of bowlers in South African cricket. A lot of these lift arm spinners in South African cricket. Too many, in my opinion. Too many.
Yes.
However,
every card is a left arm spinner.
However, he's a wrist one, not a finger one. So his wrist. So he's got a bit of funkiness about him. So this is Spice package. And he is a border. So he's border chap, been there a couple of seasons. Both had a fantastic season this season, as well as last season. 35 wickets at 19. Again, I've been saying for a little while now that there are teams in Division 1 they could definitely do with a wicket taker. A guy who's going to take a ton of wickets. Not just hold up on end. Thomas Caber. Thomas Caber for me.
Yeah,
Thomas Caber.
You're supposed to be playing this season. You're supposed to be in Division 1 this season. He's that good.
It should have been, yeah. Last season, it is slightly skewed, but he did make 200s last season with the bat as well. So he's got ability with the bat as well. It's not just going to bat 10. He's a wicket taker. He's a regular wicket taker at Border, and he's a large reason why Border had such a good season this season. Comparatively, they struggled a little bit with their batting, but their bowling really came to the fore this season. And as a spinner, he's coming into his prime now, so he knows his game. He knows what he's about. He knows his capabilities. He knows his strengths. He knows his game inside out. So for me, definitely Division 1 time for him. It's definite. Again, he can play across formats. Won't just be playing the longer format. In terms of team, well, not Borland, because that pitch will just. I don't know how Van Burg gets as many wickets as he does on that pitch. It's a credit to him that. It's a credit to him that he does. But I think he
need a spinner.
He could probably go to somewhere. I was going to say, probably could go to somewhere like the Lions. Lions are, they're not short of pace bowlers, but they are short of top spinners. Quality
especially
spinners.
After Bjorn he's a contracted Protean now, so he might not be playing all the games. Liam Alder is an option, a very good option, but as you say, I think he might benefit from a season. And so here's the thing with Liam Alder, right? I want him to play Division 1, but from a opportunity set and a winning games perspective, I'd rather give Thomas Caber an opportunity and have Liam either go play at a bottom table team. So here's the question: if there was a loan system, I'd loan Liam out to Northwest, or even I'd send him to Border, or to Boland, or I'd loan him out to Easterns. Right? I don't want to lose the talent that is Liam Alder at the Lions. My only issue is that I don't think he has it in him from a 4-day perspective to get me wickets as much as Thomas Caber does. And Thomas can also bat, and that kind of gives me that chance, right? So it's going to be quite interesting. But if I'm KZN Inland and I need a spinner, a good spinner, he's my guy. He's the guy I'm going and be like, you're coming with us. We're going to the big time together. You know, obviously Northwest has center on Muchisami, so that's off the table. Northerns have Simon Harmer, you know, but the question for Thomas Kebe is his batting good enough to keep him in the side, even if it's a side that has another spinner. So I can't look at Western Province because you got Linda and Simmons. I can't look at Boerland or the Paul Rocks because Sean van Berg is there, but he's a better batting option than Sean van Berg. But Sean van Berg is a really good batting option, right?
He's a really good batting option at the moment. Yeah.
Yes. So the only other team that I can think about, Warriors have an interesting situation. Obviously, who's their spinner? It's not Junaid Dawood.
No.
It's not Lisa Makosi because they dropped him. Ndwandwe, who's doing okay.
That's right. Yeah.
So I'm, and that's why it's for me. He needs to be in Division 1, but the question is, as a left arm spinner in a world where there's so many, you need to come up. So effectively, he needs to come up with KZN inland. There's only where I can see him getting a full chance, to play, because can't even send him to KZN, to the Dolphins, because Subrian is there on his own, and if
John Spots,
and then they've also got that other Kes boy, that kid, Bryce Parsons. So it's a tough world to be a left arm spinner. But if Boerland want to play a 2-spinner option, right, then Thomas Kebe should be your second spinner. If Thomas Kebe can bat in your top 6, which I don't think so. I think he's a great 7. I don't think he's a great 6. But anyway, okay. Tim, I'm going to Southwestern Districts. This man is 28 years old. He's an all-roundish option. I think he was their captain, actually. Scored 325 runs in the 4-day series, batting low down the order. I think he was batting at 7. Onkenyaku averaged 46, which is really impressive. He scored a double century as well. It was his only score above, so take it with a pinch of salt. But I also know that from a bowling perspective, this guy is also up there in terms of what you're looking for. He's the one I'd be looking at from a bid pot bowler on a slower wicket, who can give you something. I know the ship has sailed at Western Province, but there could possibly be an opportunity. I know we're throwing everyone to Northwest. I know we are. I understand that, but it's Boerland, and it's Northwest for me. And to a certain extent, I consider him a bench option at KZN at the Dolphins, but the Dolphins look really good. But obviously the Dolphins have those quicks that they have there. But I think Onkenyaku needs another shot, especially with that ability with the bat. And so that for me is something that I'm looking at. But what do you think?
No, I like him. You're right, it didn't really work out last time, but I do like him. And if we look at it logically, right until the last game, just before the last game, Easterns could have won the 4-day series.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Easterns, SWD.
Yes.
SWD could have won the and large part due to him. It's a large part due to him and his performances. If it has taken him a little bit longer than many people thought to finally, get his steps into gear and be where he needs to be, That's fine. We're all moving in different times and different places. So I see no reason why that should not be an option at all. I've always been a fan of his. We don't need to apologise for moving the players to Northwest. The reason we are doing this is not because they were better than the Knights. It's the Knights were terrible. That's the reality. The Knights were absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
Northwest kept losing. They kept struggling. They kept losing, and it didn't matter because the Northwest kept playing.
Let's give Northwest credit for that third place finish in the One Day Cup this year. They were sensation. Yeah. But they're not
absolutely.
They need balance.
Yeah.
They need balance. Yeah. And I think a guy like Onkenyako gives you that balance. I know you've got the Delanos. I know you've got the Dwaynes, and they've retired. So Onkenyako kind of fits there across both formats, right? And to a certain extent, that's something, you know. Whereas I look at Boland or the Paul Rocks, and I'm like, who's their all rounder? You know, who's that guy who they can rely on to give them something with bat and ball at a 7? Here's an interesting one. If I was JP Germany, okay, I don't know if JP Germany is still going to coach them, but anyway, if I was Paul, I'd call Andile Petlugwayo and be like, we can rehabilitate you. But that's a Division 1 conversation. But that's the type of stuff I'd be doing, right? Trying to get myself back into it, over and above all the movements. But yeah, Tim, your next name.
My next name, again, I saw him play debut in the T20 Cup, and I knew once he got to 20, I said, this boy can play. This boy can play. We didn't have the Colts this season, which was a terrible thing. It needs to come back next season. We need to have that gap between club, Colts, and provincial. But the fact that we didn't have it meant that this guy played more in the professional setup. It meant this guy was played more, and we got to see more of him. So he made 52 in his T20 debut. He made 116, if my memory corrects me, in his 4-day debut. I think he made a second 100 on the 4-day setup. His strike rate in the 4-day setup is 107. 107.
Yes.
4-day setup.
Yes.
He plays the way that we want to see our players play. Particularly if you are in Division 2, we want you to dominate that setup and say, right, I need to move. Mark Pierce, Eastons.
Yeah.
Credible.
He was on my list.
Credible talent.
He is the issue, consistency.
Yeah.
For instance, remember, and to a certain extent, I think for the listeners and the viewers, right? If you're going to be a Division 2 player and make it in the England squad, you need to be averaging like 60. Whereas in the Division 1, guys can average 45 upwards and they can still make it. But this is before Brendan McCullum, right?
Yeah.
Mark Pierce has strike rate on lock. So he's not going out to hang around. But it's that hit or miss, hot and cold. He averaged 39 in 9 innings, which is okay. But those 200s, we all sat and were like, okay, this kid's got something. He has something in it. So now, my question is, you'd be taking a punt on a player who you're just seeing talent, and you need to then, as a coach, work on making it consistent. Taking certain shots out of his game that are available in T20 and limited overs cricket, but still giving him the same effectiveness and power that he needs to be a high strike rate. And so there's a lot of work that you're going to have to do there with him. But I like what I see.
Yeah.
And look, if you want to shake
Yeah,
things up, if you want to, you know, do something as a
yeah,
team in this, in Division One next year, he's your guy.
yeah.
Um, if
No,
you are
I
if you
agree.
are the Titans and you are looking for a little bit more of an attacking option than Neil Brunt, and maybe Neil can bat at three, he's your guy. I know Tiernis is retired, so there might be a spot available. He's your guy. If you are obviously Northwest, we know but if you are Paul Rocks, he's your guy. He's effectively what the Northwest thought Heino Kun could be,
Yes,
right?
correct.
Exactly.
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
Or what the Lions thought Cameron Delport could be. The Lions
yeah.
might need an opener. He's the type of guy you would go to, right? Western Province, you've got those kids, so there's not going to be a lot of talk about that. Also, with the Warriors have their little setup there with Britsky, with Herman, and yeah, we know
They've
what's
already
about.
got that. They've already got that.
But
They've got what they need in terms of
Robbie
that.
P wanted to be greedy. If Robbie P wanted to be a little bit more greedy, throw that kid in and have that top three of Britsky, Pierce, and Herman, and then you can tell us what you think. You know. Also with the Dolphins, if you're looking for an alternative to a Grant Rulofsson, or maybe moving Grant Rulofsson down the order, but you've got quite a nice little batting setup there with Rulofsson and Peterson and
Yeah,
Arvier, who's now going to be more available to you. Um,
I
so yeah,
think, yeah. You're taking a punt, and if you're moving him to the Lions or the Dolphins, he's not playing every game. That's my only issue. That's my only issue for him from his side of things.
so
Do
what I
you
would
want
say
to
to
take?
him, what if
Yeah,
I was him, I'd stay at Easton's for one more year. I'd want to be the number one run scorer in Division Two in the ODIs as well as in 4-day. And then the year after, when I think you'll get a Dean Alga retirement after next year, probably even Sardo might move on. So there'll be more openings, and there's no way anybody wants to move you. And you can go to good franchises. Because right now, if you want to play all the time, you're going to be stuck in Botch. You're going to be stuck in okay, Paul, being stuck in Paul's not a bad thing. But that's the type of thing you need to look to. Tim, any other names? I think you've covered my four. There's one name we haven't spoken about, and that's Rivaldo Munsami. Is it a chance for him to come back? He's the top run scorer in the 4-day series. He's scored the most hundreds. Is there a spot for him in Division 1?
my only issue here is I thought he was the finished article of what he is when he was in Division 1. I thought that's it. This is him. Incredibly talented. Got all the shots in the book. But there's something missing. There's something missing. I don't know what it is, but there's something in terms of the consistency. Or the consistency is missing. I don't know why the consistency is missing. That's my only issue. I don't know.
He was consistent under Mark Charlton.
Absolutely. My issue is when he comes to Division 1. My issue with Division 1 is there an element of him going, I've made it. I've made it. If I average 35, that's done. I keep my contract and I'm okay. There just seems to be something there that's not quite right. I hope I'm wrong. In terms of talent, there is definitely a player there that can play in Division 1. He's very exciting to watch. He's not boring. So he, in theory, he should put bums on seats in terms of the white ball setup. He's definitely good enough. I just think right now, if you give me an option between him and Mark Pierce, I'm picking Mark Pierce. Mark Pierce looks like he wants that. He wants that next step. To me. He just wants it a little bit more. I don't know. I'm looking very much from the outside here at the moment, so I could be completely wrong. It just looks to me
Could it
like
not be that? Could it not be that to prove your earlier theory, right? Had he started at a Division Two province and not been called up to the Titans and to try and play there and try be their guy, whatever it is, that he'd have a much better career arc, right? Because it looks like obviously he's dropped down to Division Two for poor performances, but maybe he just needed a place where he could, get the confidence, understand how to play this game, understand how to shape his career, and then move up. Because I'm thinking, him coming down, he needed to score runs. He scored the most runs in 4-day series, right?
yeah,
So, and the average was healthy. It's not like it was
yeah,
an average of 65. It's the highest average in everyone on this list. That's not Tara Blanche from Northern Cape. So I'm sitting here going, okay, dude, let me give him a chance.
yeah.
I,
No,
I'll give him a
absolutely.
chance.
Yeah,
And
no, absolutely.
there's to a certain extent, even in that Western Province middle order, he could play, you know. And so I'm like, yeah. If he's the one guy I'd be like, if teams didn't pick him, then it might be some sort of there's a bad name going around, but you can't overlook those numbers. And even as
Yeah,
KZN Inland, you can't overlook those numbers and be like, we don't want this guy on our team. Like Northwest, no one's scoring at 66 in your team. No one's scoring at 66 at for the Rocks. So, huh? So
yeah. No,
that's
no.
my thing. I'm like, I
Yeah,
understand there might be, I don't know, I don't know, uh I'm not. I'm losing English. I don't know. It's still a Monday. It's still very early on Monday. But there might be, some sort of like a, bad stench, or not a stench, but some rumors.
non. Yeah, not non-on-field issue. Non-on-field issue. That is.
Yes, some
Yeah,
rumors
yeah,
that are floating around dressing rooms in Division One, but you cannot override something like this. And that's what Mark Charlton wanted, right? Mark Charlton brought guys in to kind of prove themselves, and he did.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it's
No,
and so I'd be surprised. And there's room for both him and Mark Pierce in a side. Unless if you are the Knights and are like trying to rebuild and trying to get back to Division One, maybe you can take a punt on him there. But I think he's in a good spot at Northern Cape. It's just being better. Yeah.
yeah.
Cool.
If I'm him, I'm moving to Division One or staying in Northern Cape. I'm not moving sideways. I'm not moving
Okay. So
sideways if I'm him. He's
got
26.
a
He's the
yeah.
yeah.
Got a couple of minutes to go. Any names that we've forgotten on your list? Because I've gone through my entire list.
Okay, so Stefan Tate. I know we touched
Yes.
on him, but he has to be in Division One.
Well,
I,
he's moving up with the team, so it'd be weird
yes, that's
if
true.
they left
That is
him
true.
out.
Of course, he's moving up. Of course.
Look, if I'm
So
KZN
yes,
Inland, I'm calling Miguel Pretorius. I get that, but that doesn't mean I'm leaving Stefan Tate behind.
yeah,
But give us his
yeah.
numbers so everyone understands.
Okay, yeah. So Stefan Tate's numbers there are 25. No, 31. 31 wickets at 16. That's we know what he's about. We know what his qualities are. Pure pace, good short ball. He's gonna trouble people in Division One. No doubt about it. He's
Yeah.
gonna trouble people in Division One. The other one, who I think will be hard done by, because I think if they had to choose between Caber and Whitehead, they're gonna choose Caber. But Sean Whitehead, SWD, 25 wickets at 18 last
You
season.
just got so many spinners, Oak. Like that's
I
the
know.
problem.
I know
Like,
you
unless
can't. I don't
Schonberg
think you can have
retires.
both of them. Yeah,
Like we need
I
guys
know.
to leave. We need like guys to retire. Or we need Simon Harmer to be the number one option at the Proteas. That opens up a spinner spot at the Titans. And
yeah,
either one of Caber and Sean Whitehead makes sense for me. But Simon Harmer's been the most available player for the Titans I've ever seen. So, um, yeah. So that's where I'm at. But yeah, this was good. I enjoyed this. This was fun. Yeah. So that was Division Two. Let us know if you have any other players that you think we've forgotten to talk about or you want us to talk about. We're gonna do this for Division One as well, but there'll be players who should be in Division Two. So that's going to be quite an interesting one because I think we've got a lot of options. But yeah, look out for that one. Obviously, the Proteas are playing the West Indies. I don't know when tomorrow. In Poch. And so that's going to be quite interesting. Obviously, Timber is Africa's best batter. We'll talk about that. We've got time to talk about that. Don't worry. I haven't
We
forgotten. I
will.
haven't forgotten.
We will. Don't worry. We will.
And Tim's whitewash prediction just went out the window.
I know.
Because
It's all Timber's fault. It's all Timber's fault.
I know, right? I know, right? It's all Timber's fault. He took too many balls. Anyway, outside of that, thank you very much. Remember, please do. We're on Spotify, YouTube, as well as Apple Podcasts. The audio versions on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. The video versions on YouTube. Please subscribe, follow, and also, share with your friends. And if you want to advertise in an advertiser, we get about 1,000 hits a week. So it'd be really great for you from an audience to get a bit of a global audience if you want to advertise on our platform. Outside of that, thank you very much, Tim. Goodbye to everybody and lesale kakahiso.